Tubers, welcome back for another adventure. And let's pretend for 30 seconds that you're out with a buddy, your all-terrain vehicle just dies on the side of the trail. You see smoke coming out of it. The wire harness is cooked. Or maybe you buy one like that where the wire harness is cooked. And it's easy enough to throw a carburetor onto it, or perhaps the carburetor and gas are good. All you need to do is get the spark back and turn the motor over. And what I'm going to show you how to do is how to put together an emergency or a test ignition system and a test button for turning over the electric starter. If you have a pull start, you can use that. But a lot of these things, particularly the bigger CC stuff, they only come with electric starts nowadays. All the China stuff comes with electric starts only. Occasionally a kickstart, but mostly just electric starts. So the first thing you're going to need is a 4-pin DC, ATV, CDI, and harness. And now where do you get them? Obviously you can get them off of Amazon, and you could see about 20 bucks. You can get them off of eBay. You can see about 15 bucks. See the nice little box they come in, right? And if you actually buy the thing, this is how it shows up at your house. And we'll take it out of the box and put it together in a second. The next thing you're gonna have to figure out is how to hook it up to this. Let's put it together first though. Get everything out of the box, and it's all sitting here right in front of you. First of all, this is the only plug that goes into the CDI. So plug it right on in there, right? Not hard to do. I'm sure you could get that figured. Done. The second thing is there's only, that black and yellow and green. There's only one set of wires that match that. So you plug those ball connectors right in there. And I'll do that off camera. As you look at the back of the plug, I want you to notice the following, right? You have blue, sometimes it's blue and white. You have green, black and yellow, black and red on the bottom, and in the middle bottom you have black with a white stripe. If you've noticed, this CDI has a no connect where that black with the white stripe goes. If instead of using a DC CDI, you were using an AC CDI, it's that black with the white that you turn the motor off with. What you do is you short that to ground, green, and it turns off the motor. For the DC CDIs, you just turn off the power, right? CDI has no power, it makes no spark. Sometimes quality on these things is not very good. They swap wires around. So just to look, right? Blue and white, green, no connection, right? There's a black and white wire there that I'm going to snip, but that's a no connection. The black and red switch 12 volts, and the yellow and black goes to the spark plug coil. And if you follow all this stuff around, right, you could see that's how we're going to hook it all up. But once again, back to these extra wires, right? Well, one of these goes to the handlebar switch. So if you push the button on the handlebar switch on a pit bike with an AC CDI, that shorts that to ground and the engine stops. This goes to the key switch. You turn the key off, it shorts that black and white to green ground, and it shuts down the motor. We don't need that. Once again, we're using a DC CDI and we're going to turn the power on and off. So why don't we just get rid of that? You can see I snipped the wire off. That lets you slide it out of here. I cut the connectors off, slipped the pipe off, and I got rid of all the extra stuff. Just a couple more steps and we're going to smash this on and have it running. Now for the wires going into the CDI. See that black and red? That's where you're going to put your 12 volts. See this green one? And all the greens go together, so pick any green one. So between those two wires, you're going to put plus 12 on the red one, black and red. And on the green one, ground, you're going to put the neutral. Between, and you guys can pick them, let's see, the blue wire and the green wire. This is where you're going to feed the pulse from the pulse generator, which is typically right there with your stator. And I'll show you how to find that. And this extra wire, I like to hook it to the engine somewhere on the head or somewhere on the metal of that. So now that I described this all to you, wouldn't it be handy if we extended the wires a little bit, color coded them, and hooked them all up? And if you do this is what I came up with. So let's start at the spark plug. For me, it was more convenient to have a straight one instead of a right angle bend, so I changed this. That adds $5 to the project. Right, goes into the coil. These are still hooked up the same. No surprise there. Then you'll notice I put a short little alligator on the blue and white and a short little alligator on the green. Green is always ground, and I stuck with black. The blue and white is a signal wire, but I went short red because these two are going to be coming together at the connector that comes out of the stator. Right? Black and red, long red wire, and I put a switch in it. Right? That way I can turn it on and off. Green, this goes to the negative on the battery, it's ground, and I have the extra lead that I could hook right to the case. So here we have it. It's that simple. For me, these came pre-built, and I just snipped the end off and recycled it. Same with this guy, right? Snipped the end off and recycled it. Plus I just grabbed an extra one. And there we have it, all ready. Now all we have to do is smash this onto the machine. Most of your machines, I'd say all, but I'm sure there's an exception to the rule out there. Most of your machines where you have the starter, the side that you drive the starter on because you're driving the flywheel, or the pull starter on, right? On the flywheel side is where your stator lives, where your stator harness is. And here are the wires coming out of your stator. And you might be saying, how do I know which is which? I use a few different tricks. But what you want to do is just quickly take note of what the connectors look like. If you have 3 of the same color wire or 2 of the same color wire going into a connector, chances are that's alternator output. In this case, I got 3 for a 3-phase. If there's 2, it's only a 2-phase. So you've just eliminated 3 out of the 7 wires. Now what do the other wires do? If you get out your shop manual and look in the back of it, you'll see that there's a wiring diagram, and you could get the color of the wires that way. I don't like doing it that way. Typically what I do is I go out on eBay and look for a used stator, and a lot of times from that you can track the color of the wires down. If a used stator is an used OEM stator. If you're really desperate and you can't figure it out from, you don't want to buy the book, sometimes you could buy a used stator pretty cheap. And these things must go through stators because there's enough characters selling stators and pulse generators on eBay, that typically means that there's a replacement market, so they must die. You'll know you have the white wires because if you're looking at the resistance between all your alternator wires, they'll be pretty nearly as short. And as you look at these other wires, you're going to see like green. If you go between green and the engine case, you're probably going to see ground. If you go between red and the engine case, or if you go between green and red, you're probably going to see less than 10 ohms. That's the coil, maybe as many as 20 ohms. That's the coil that powers your AC CDI in this case. That only leaves 2 wires, that white one with the red stripe, and it's hard to tell because a lot of that wore off, or the pure white one. They're side by side, and those are the ones that actually go to the pulse generator. Those are the colors typically Yamaha likes to do. White with a red stripe, that's the hot side of the pulse generator, and white with no stripe, that's the cold side of the pulse generator. Honda likes to use blue or blue and white, and as you go through a bunch of others, Kawasaki has their own colors and all. And a lot of times they separate them somehow as you're looking at the wires and you finally debug your way through it. You'll go, oh man, that makes sense. I shouldn't have sweat so hard about it. Now, let's just hook up the little creation we built. Hooking it up to the all-terrain vehicle, spark plug wire goes to the spark plug. I got a nice solid ground here, and you can see I have it going to the frame of the spark coil, and also with this green wire going into the ground on the harness. Those 2 wires I identified as the pulse generator. You can see the blue and white for my CDI goes to the red and white, and the black, which is ground, goes to the pure white. So all that's hooked up. Other than that, you'll see that I hooked up the ground directly to the battery, the hot directly to the battery, and I hacked in this on and off switch. I put that black stripe on it so I know which side is on. And in addition, I added this push button switch. Notice this push button switch goes from the battery through the push button out, and it goes to one side of the starter solenoid coil, and the other side of the starting solenoid coil goes through this black wire up to the negative. That way, when I push this button, the coil is energized, and you can hear motor goes round and round. The only thing I have hooked up, I have the ground hooked up, which goes to the frame, right? And I hooked up the positive, which goes to the starting solenoid, one of the big lugs on the starting solenoid, and the other big lug on the other side of the starting solenoid goes to the starter. Starter goes through ground, back up to this. So when I close this, the plunger closes and sends power through my starter. When I push the button, it sends power through the coil, which energizes the solenoid, which turns my starter when that little plunger comes up and hooks things up. So what do I need to do? I need to put some gas in this thing. Yeah, I need to put some gas in this thing, and then we'll see if she starts. So this thing seems to be drinking a little bit of gas. I think I'm going to try to start it without the choke initially. We'll see what it does. Anyway, let me set up the camera. I think it's all ready to go. Fingers crossed, eh? I think you guys could see everything important. By the way, I checked the oil off camera. You'll notice any smoke if it does have any. So first thing I need to do is turn on the ignition switch. Bang. Choke is off. Here's my little push button starter, whose wire fell off the battery. And here we go. Wish me luck. Okay, let's try some choke. Even idled somewhat. In theory, now that you have spark and now that you got the engine started, you can smash this thing in gear and it'll go. You could ride it. Please don't. And the reason why I'm going to say that is if your throttle sticks wide open, if you can't get to that little on-off switch, or if you hot-wired it directly, that engine's going to just keep pulling, right? You're not going to be able to stop it. Second, I was smart enough to make sure I was in neutral, right? And a lot of times if I'm out riding, I'll bring the bike in and I forget to put it back into neutral. So the neutral interlock switch saves me from the engine firing right up in gear and the thing running into a garage door or somebody. So, you know, make sure you use the proper safeties. And as a matter of fact, now that we have spark and we have a way of energizing the starting solenoid, in the next video, if you guys are interested, I'm going to show you how to integrate it into the wire harness, such that when you turn the power on, right, you power up the starting solenoid through the neutral switch, the neutral interlock switch. So if you're not neutral, the starting solenoid will not engage. So that's one of the safeties. That's probably, in my opinion, the most important safety you could put on these things. They have it so that the engine will not start if you don't squeeze the brake in. And they do that for a reason, so that if, let's say, you're Joe Atlas and you can pull a 600cc motor strong enough, right? You're hanging on to the brake and theoretically this thing isn't going to go anywhere. Notice I said theoretically. It's pretty hard to hang on to the brake. Typically you want to give it a little fuel when you start it and pull the string all at the same time, but you never know. There are some three-armed aliens out there. Maybe one of those creatures could do it. So what I'm going to do for the future project is integrate it, and I want to figure out how to do the on-off switch. The way this on-off switch is, it shorts when you turn it off here. It shorts those two wires together, which turns off the AC CDI. Doesn't do me any good to do that. I actually need to take away the power, which is open circuit. So I might just put a separate switch on the dashboard to do that. This thing also has a fan for cooling, so that might be a separate switch. And depending on what's going on over here with this 2-wheel drive, 4-wheel drive, that might be a third switch. So once again, we got to see how bad the wiring is. Somebody's been in here kind of fooling around. So a lot of times the OEM wiring is just so hammered, the switches are so hammered, you know, as these machines go from quarter century to half century mark for years old, a lot of times the switches and the connectors and the wiring doesn't hold up, especially the Chinese stuff. The wiring is so thin, it's amazing it works at all. Anyway, I need you all to keep your feet down, keep your heads up. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it helped somebody get something started. Obviously, for 15, 20 bucks, you can get an ignition system onto your bike and get it fired up. But please remember safety. It doesn't do you any good if you're watching my videos from a hospital bed. In the meantime, I need you all to keep your feet down, your heads up, and I need you to get out there and enjoy each and every day. You don't know how many days you're getting, so get out there and have some fun. Bye now.